Morning, morning, morning. Yes, we're back with another episode, another rider. Today we have the lovely lady Naomi in the car, and she's working for a very well-known TV channel and TV program. She's going to tell us about her career, how she got into it, the route she took, and what she learned that she can share with other people for obviously educational purposes. Nice to have you here today, Naomi.
Thanks, nice to be here.
That's good. So tell us, when did you realise you wanted to get into the world of media?
Well, I've always been interested in that world in English. I did English at university, so just sort of that sort of space was always interested in. I think media probably came about halfway through university. I did a radio show and really enjoyed that, and then kind of realised that you could
What's the
do
show
that as a
called?
job. Oh my god, what was the show called? Well, it went through a lot of evolutions because I had a co-host and then I had another two co-hosts, and it was like a music show and then it was sort of like a comedy show. So I actually really don't remember. That's actually making me want to go and revisit that now.
Do you remember what the topic was?
Well, it started off as like a music show. So I had a friend and we had different tastes in music. So we were introducing each other to our tastes in music, basically. And then it was more of a chat show. And then it sort of became, in our last year, maybe because we sort of had given up at that point, but we're doing sort of like a comedy show where we were pretending that we were in an apocalyptic bunker and that the rest of the world had basically been destroyed. Yeah, this is very strange, but
Okay.
but it shows how less seriously I think the less serious we took it, the more fun it became and the more quirky and original it became as well. So
You
yeah,
had a lot of fun though when you were doing it.
yeah, it was so much fun. So much.
So your degree that you took is English. Did you find that you needed that degree to get into the profession that you're in?
Yeah, I did need that degree in a way, but I also did another degree. I did a master's in broadcast journalism specifically. And I have found that with at least with my first few jobs, they did ask for a degree like that, English, history, something like that. Something that would be useful for journalism, politics, something like that. And then some jobs do specify a bit more. If you have a journalism, you have to get like a certain credit or whatever. But it really depends on the job, basically. But I do think it massively helped that I did English and then I did that master's.
Okay, okay.
But people get in without those all the time.
Why did you do a PhD after the degree? A lot of people just run with their piece of A4 paper and give me a job, give me a job.
Well, I did a master's, not a PhD.
Oh, sorry.
I think because I'd basically figured out, I want to do journalism. And then I talked to a lot of journalists and they'd recommended doing the master's and having one more thing. And I just thought it would be a good way to have a transition year. So a year between actually finishing uni and starting a job, because the masters is a bit more like you would have to do work experience or you could get a job alongside it. So it meant that coming out of university, I didn't have as much culture shock because I'd had a year to sort of get used to being out of it and being more in the work world, and then I was able to do that. And also it just gave me, I did it, I think it's supposed to be the best university for journalism
What
in the
was
country.
this?
It's called City University of London.
Okay.
And their journalism department is the best journalism department. So they just had a lot of advice, a lot of connections, and that massively helped as well.
Okay, that's great. So you went to the city and your first job was?
My first job was at the Daily Express. I was just a reporter at the Daily Express, basically.
What you like? Well, define what's the role of a reporter?
It's basically, I was more for the digital side than the actual newspaper. So that was basically, and I was more news based. So I would basically watch the morning shows and pick out interesting like BBC Radio 4 or Sky News in the morning or anything like that, or BBC Breakfast, and, you know, looking out for politicians or experts, and then picking out the interesting parts of the interview, and then basically writing them up for the Daily Express site.
So you look at other shows,
Yes.
and then you take key pointers. Oh, they seem to know stuff, let's say, about the Iraq War or COVID.
Yeah.
We need them on our show.
Well, it was that I would write an article about what they'd said, basically.
Oh,
And then I also did kind of evolved into other things where I would go to different places, sort of like outside London, and speak to people there and get, you know, especially during the last election, and get their opinions on, you know, the election and Brexit and things like that, and then write about those as well.
What did you find? I was going to go down one rabbit hole, but I think I'll go down this one. What did you find? What surprised you about talking to the public about politics, travelling outside of London? So I assume you're a Londoner originally.
I'm not actually. I'm from Manchester.
Oh.
I don't have the accent, really.
The dreaded North.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so before I came to London for my Masters, I could count the amount of times I'd been in London on one hand. So that was a big change as well. So I didn't really have the problem of, I'd never go outside London. I don't talk to people outside London because I'm literally from the north. But traveling from my job inside the city to outside to speak to people about the election, I think I was mostly just more surprised at some of the ignorance. I mean, I think I spoke to one man who didn't even realise there was an election going on, and that made me a bit sad. But that's democracy for you. Everyone, regardless, gets one vote.
Wouldn't you say that the problem with that is not that the man didn't know the election's going on, that politics has got to the state that people just don't care anymore. They just don't trust these politicians.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's how I would have looked at it more, that he's just given up. He's just said, listen, I don't even need to know anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that was another thing that a lot of people were disillusioned. I say that as somebody as well who, you know, I don't trust politicians. I think the majority of people, I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who did. But I also do think you still have a responsibility as somebody in, you know, a member of the public to know what's going on and to react to that. Because if you're going to complain about the way things are and then you don't know that there's an election going on, I don't think those two things can exist at the same time. So either you need to take yourself completely out of it and admit that, you know, you're not going to do anything, or you have to try at least. But again, it's not completely his fault. It was, you know, and especially at the time, because that was really the Brexit election, it was just very toxic. You didn't really, I hated, it sort of ruined my job for me because I just didn't like having to be in that every day. Whereas a lot of people can take themselves out of it and be like, okay, I'm not going to listen to this today. I couldn't, because it was my job, and I just hated the sort of toxic nature of it.
How do you develop that skill? How do you think other people develop that skill of being able just to say, well, that's work and this is my life?
Because a lot of them, besides journalism, a lot of them aren't that, you know, if you work in a shop or something, you can literally just turn it off. You don't have to read the newspaper, you don't have to do all these things. But because of the nature of my job, I had to. So because of that, it's not as intrinsically linked. You can just switch it off. It's a bit harder nowadays because, you know, we're all so connected, and I think, yeah, you know, getting notifications on your phone and stuff, it's harder.
What I meant was your colleagues. Were your colleagues able to switch off?
Oh, I see. I don't know. I feel a lot of them had been in it longer than I had. I just joined. I'd been there for like a year and a bit because of COVID. But so I think they probably were able to, you know, separate themselves a bit easier. Maybe me not so much, because I was still in that, like, I'm still really invested in politics. I want to, you know,
make a change
sort of thing.
Okay.
And personally my politics didn't align with the Daily Express. It was just like my first job.
That's what I was going to ask you about. How do you write something and write it in a neutral point of view? Is that possible?
It is possible, but
especially London being as diverse as it is.
Yeah, it is possible. You just have to be a bit more considerate about what you write. And I tried, again, despite working for the Daily Express, I was always very, very impartial in what I wrote, and I included both sides and a lot of facts and evidence. But obviously that you have to work a bit harder to do that. If you just want to sort of run with the line, then you could easily just write something and not do that.
I'm with you. Now, currently you work on Loose Women.
Mm-hmm.
And you are, well, explain what you do.
I'm a researcher, so I basically just like research about the guests coming on the show. I find topics for the women to debate about, and I just help get, like, if we need any footage or anything like that, I just help to make the show, basically.
So it's a follow-on from what you did for the Daily Express, but on a lighter note.
Yes, it's much more of a magazine show. So we do politics and the news of the day, but we also do fun things and, you know, things that are a bit less serious and, you know, talking about the women's beauty and skincare and stuff like that. So
okay,
there's a lot of, you know.
What have you learned in your industry that you wish you knew when you had started?
I think probably just tolerance. I'm just a lot more tolerant of everyone's views. Not that I never was, but I think I was less forgiving when I was younger about people who maybe were on the opposite spectrum to me in terms of politics or values or whatever. But because I worked for the Express and now I work for Loose Women, it's mostly like older women and stuff. I think I have a better appreciation for everyone's differences in opinion, and I understand why people would think a certain way or say a certain thing. But, you know, at the same time, I would still disagree and, you know, respectfully disagree with them. And I know how to say my point a bit better now as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's a true articulation to being able to make somebody feel comfortable, but at the same time disagree with what they say. But still understand where you're coming from. Yeah,
I feel like that's where a lot of arguments are, that people get very defensive when you point out something wrong, but it also from you, it's how you're pointing that out. Because if you're deliberately trying to make someone feel stupid, then they're never going to learn. So it comes from both ends, I think.
Yeah. No, I see that. That makes total sense. What does the future hold for you?
Hopefully, well, I did just get a promotion. So at the end of September, I'll be, doing maternity cover as an assistant producer, which is the level above me.
You're going up the ladder?
Yeah, going up the ladder a bit.
You don't sound too happy about it.
No, yes, I am. And then next year will be the year where I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to go to a different show? Am I going to leave ITV? Am I going to, you know? So that will be the year that I'm really thinking about how do I want to go forward. But I'm still I don't know. Okay.
That's good. Well, thanks a lot for what you do. We appreciate it. And we wish you well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
We hope that episode enhanced your life. We post an interview every day as well as vlogging on our social media channels. Don't forget to subscribe to get our latest episode.